So you've worked with Little Uzi Vert, Shaquille O'Neal. What is the communication like and feedback with these clients?
How the processes for each artist have been extremely different, and it's so weird because everyone might think it's the same.
Mm,
I've also done some work for like Meg the Stallion. I did work for Excision as well, and so those were completely drastically different from each other. If we were to break it down and putting it on a broad scope of things, like they're very similar. You're creating content for a big stage, live performance, all of that. But the difference between something like Meg the Stallion and Excision is very much like very peculiar about screen sizes, how content is going to move and feel to the music that is being played. So does it need to be time coded? Does it need to be this and that? Whereas Meg the Stallion, it's very much like, okay, we need you to make a clip, we're going to play this clip. It might be on a loop. It might just go to a logo of Meg the Stallion's name. It might just be iMag, like video footage of her dancing. We didn't know.
On today's episode, we have with us an extremely notable artist, and his name is Will Harvey. He's a good friend of ours, and this is his second time on the podcast, and it is an honor to have him. Some of his recent works include joining Beeple Studio. With that, he was a part of the grand opening, and he does even some of the curating on what artwork goes in the studio, and a lot of other things, which we dive into, and it's very exciting. He's also been doing everydays for over 4 years, and if you haven't done an everyday before, well, it's hard to even make it past 7 days, so it's very impressive. This guy is very well-rounded, has tons of experience in almost every part of the field, and I just cannot wait for you guys to listen to this episode. So I'm not gonna say any more. Enjoy the episode. All right, welcome to the XR Motion Show. So today we have an amazing episode. I am so excited already. I'm just laughing with our guests. Can't wait to introduce them. This is going to be such a fun episode. But before we bring in our guests, I just want to say hey to the world's most amazing co-host ever, Andrew. How's it going?
It's going good, man. We are back. I feel like we've had a brief hiatus here, but super stoked to be back. Really exciting guest to kick things back off. So very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very excited as well. And after the hiatus, I am definitely feeling refreshed and excited. So
absolutely,
yeah. I can't wait.
It's kind of crazy. Summer's like over, but we made it through. And it was 95 degrees in New York today, so it's not like summer's gone, but I feel like we got some vacays in, got some beach time in. I'm feeling refreshed, so yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Well, speaking of our guests, we have the amazing, legendary Will Harvey, aka I'm gonna say it my way, Revilo.
Perfect. That's all you needed. That's all you needed.
I know.
Perfect.
We were talking earlier, you've got a million different ways to say your name, and you've heard it a million ways. I've even heard so many people call it a different way. How do you, can we unlock the secret of how you say it? Or
man, I don't even know myself. I don't know. It's nah. I usually say Revilo.
Revilo.
Yeah, because the majority of people will call me Rev, and so
that's
what I feel like I always say just Rev, but
yeah. I'll go by anything, ravioli, revolution, God knows what. Like, I'll take it, whatever. As long as you're there, as long as the R is there, and then everything
and
else
the EV, ravioli,
it all works. It all works.
I love that. Well, this is your second time on the podcast, so thank you so much for coming back on. I'm excited to catch up.
Yeah, dude.
It's been about a year. Can you just I think a great way to start off would be what have you been up to the past year and a half?
Dude, oh my God. I don't even remember. I can't remember if I talked about it a lot the last time. The whole working with Beeple Studios, and
we didn't even get into it.
I think I might have mentioned a little bit of it, but now I'm a little bit more just like, this is actually happening and this is what I'm doing. At the time, it was very much like not secretive, but if it did come up in conversation, I would talk about it. Yeah, but I guess now it's like the cat's out of the bag. A lot of people do know about it, so might as well talk about it. Yeah, so I am doing a lot of work with Beeple Studios, doing a lot with their live shows, helping in the content creation, just all the above. 3D artist, 3D motion graphics designer, R&D, tech, and all that stuff. So yeah, since the last time, let's see, grand opening had happened.
Yeah.
That was
All
huge, man. Everybody
yeah,
Like
was talking about
I
that.
actually I kind of want to like just dig into that maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I guess maybe talk about what this studio is, because it's pretty insane. And
if anybody has ever been, you'll go in, you'll see the gallery, and then if you go to the other half of the space, it's the experiential space. So it's three giant walls that span pretty much the height of the entire warehouse.
wow.
12 projectors. I want to say 72 TVs. I could be wrong with that number. Um, but basically we will take content and display it in this giant experiential space where it's all encompassing, all your auditorial visual senses are basically an overload, and you're experiencing all of this just crazy content.
So are you doing residencies, or is it just sort of like aggregating just whatever is the most sort of current art that people are submitting? Like how does the, how would one go about having their art displayed in that space?
So in the beginning, it was basically open submission. You send in your work, and then I'd filter through, and if they met the requirements for the specific thing that we needed, they will get pushed on. If they didn't even meet the minimum requirements, it's sorry, but we had to push you in a different direction. And then Beeple would go from there and decide whether or not he wants this work, that work, and then it would go and be displayed. And it's still a thing. So as long as the submission portal is still open, you're able to send your work in and have it, either be seen or not be seen. But I still do push people to try to go and find the project files and still create things,
Yeah.
because there's more than likely it could be seen in the space. Like
Yeah.
we
Wow.
don't have a definitive plan on whose work is going to be seen, what dates they're going to be shown. It's
Okay,
going to
yeah,
be
yeah.
shown
So
in,
so
things
not
like
as
that. So
formal
like,
as like a residency system where it's like you have this week of time and here, people can come and see it at this point. That's awesome. And so
as
like
of right now, yeah, it's we don't have it's not anything like that. It's going to be very much community oriented. So if you send in something pretty dope and we see it,
yeah.
more than likely it might be shown.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
Are all of the screens
yeah.
kind of able to be live interaction with like Touch Designer, or
So we've done it with Touch Designer and Resolute.
wow.
So we've gotten both to work in conjunction with the space. And it's, yeah, you can do some crazy type of visual stuff for it. Live inputting effects, and you can display your like computer on the walls. You can display like live video. So if I wanted to plug in a Fire Stick and watch HBO or something, you could plug it into the thing and it'll display up in the space,
That's awesome.
So like there's a lot of things you could do with it. At that point, it's just a canvas you got to paint onto. So
And wanted to
yeah.
almost get to the studio later on, but I'm glad we're actually just talking about it now. So many good
Yeah.
questions. But what are some of the pain points of like kind of scaling this studio right now? Is and like is there anything that's kind of been difficult in the past year that maybe you weren't expecting?
It's never usually easy going, especially like considering how things are fast paced and like very much like, let's try this now, let's do this, blah blah blah. It's always something new. But I do think that's interesting throughout the process, because there's nothing ever the same throughout the entire thing. It's always something different, and you always learn something new for each step of the way, like each step of that process. And there's always something coming out of that man's head. It's like Yeah, there's something. It's like, what the hell?
What the hell?
Like,
Well,
the hell?
I wanted to ask. I mean, it's so funny. A lot of us know people and his cadence. What's it kind of like working with him on a day-to-day basis?
It's always something. That's the thing. It's always something new. It's always like, oh shit, what? Like, what did you just say? Are you sure you want to do that? Because it's gonna be like another month of
Yeah,
craziness we're
yeah.
about to get
Like
into.
we're not
You
we
know,
can't
it's
we can't
like,
promise we'll have it done tomorrow, but like we can look into it, I guess.
yeah, we could, we just, yeah, it's very much always like, oh, we'll look into it, and then hope he doesn't bring it up again. It's like, you know, nah, there's always like some boundary pushing with whatever he's saying, and it's not always just um the actual creative side of it. I mean, y'all know his work. Y'all see
Mm,
like the craziness that comes out of it.
Right, but I mean,
yeah.
to take a visionary like that, who has a very specific style, and I don't want to say that I know what to expect with people, because in many ways it's sort of like expect the unexpected, but to
Mhm.
to scale that from a visual aesthetic to the technology that you're actually using to display it, right? Like you're sort of compounding that vision of like, let's keep things not even cutting edge, like bleeding edge, right? How do
Mhm.
you sync an experience to 72 screens, right? Like, is that a priority for Beeple Studios in terms of like the work that you're doing? Is it you're constantly trying to like meet his vision where it is, or do you feel like the tech is maybe like sort of continuing to drive this innovative view that he's always sort of had in telling a story that maybe isn't always being told?
A lot of the tech is always being updated to be able to try and meet his idea for the space itself. The space is never, it's not done.
Right.
Like when people show up, they're just seeing part 1 of a part 100,
Yeah.
of the space. It's never not finished. Like we're always going to be doing something different with it. And if you see it more of a canvas and not so much as like a finished product, it'll
Mm.
make more sense along the way. It just happens to be like part of the, canvas is already built. So now we just got to keep building onto it.
Hell yeah.
And so, yeah, there's always going to be something new with whatever he mentions or whatever he wants. And it's always going to be just a crazy ride along the way because, he might mention something where it's like, oh, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I guess we could try to do it with what we have and see what we can do, or we just go and buy something to try to see if it will
Fit the
work with his
right,
idea.
right.
Mm. Yeah, it's so cool. I love that it's kind of having an organic, fluid journey as it grows. Is there, if not, that's okay, but is there any kind of future events or milestones that you guys are looking forward to?
Be on the lookout.
All right.
Okay,
That's all I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
I
say.
yeah.
like it. All right.
Well, so okay, so aside from that, I mean,
Yeah.
let's maybe remove ourselves a little bit from Beeple Studios. So you just dropped today specifically. You just dropped a very cool VJ loop, and I,
Bravo, good
one,
sir.
let's
Very
call
good
that out.
one.
Yeah, really really nice. Before we got on the podcast, Mikey and I were talking about like, dude, I got to get like subsurface scattering on
I was like,
lock. I got to
how
get like
did
my
he
trans.
do it? Was that Plexus
Yeah,
integrating the
like
Cinema
all
port?
it was just so good. But I mean, it kind of plays to what you were just saying, right? Like where you have it sounds like you have experience beyond the scope of what you're doing maybe with people, and like it's something you've always been interested in. Yeah, I mean, do you want to just sort of share a little bit about like the kind of work you're doing separate from that? And it sounds like some of it might be informing what you're working on, but like, yeah, what are you doing as Rev right now? Like what are you working on?
I mean, pretty much whatever I feel like I want to try to like do. Like, I might have mentioned this before on whether it be to somebody or just on a interview type thing, but I do create music as well. So like I do that along with the VJ loops and whatever. So like my most recent VJ loop, if you see it on whether it be Gumroad or maybe a site that doesn't host like streaming music or whatever, you'll hear like a tune or whatever. I created that. Like that was,
Wow. So you did the audio mixing.
mhm, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Not just audio mixing, audio production, right? Like full on.
yeah,
Wow. DJ
yeah.
Rev.
I mean, and that's something that I was like, well, I mean, I make the visuals for it, and I've played music since I was like really young. So
Right.
it's something that I'm used to, but I want to try to like for the past 3 years I've been trying to like put out music, like actual music to play or whatever. And so that's been another thing that I've been doing along with like freelance work. I still do a little bit here and there, and yeah, doing the VJ loops, animations, everydays.
It's so funny
So
to hear. It's not an uncommon story. I mean, you can probably see like behind me, I got my guitar back there. There's sort of this like intersection of motion and visual stuff, right? Like
mhm.
both visuals and music paint with time, right? Like all of it is inherently tied to this idea of time passes, things happen. With a song, you can count the beat. With music, you have this, you can get into this rhythm. With visuals, it's the same kind of thing. You might, it's more maybe visual than it is auditory, but the two sort of play together perfectly. Um,
Mhm.
how do you feel like that is a strength that you have, maybe having a music background and being able to piece together? I mean, VJ loops are a perfect example of like having a cycle that can continue and repeat, like a coda in music or a refrain or a chorus. Do you find that to be
Mhm.
like a strength in your work?
Having the skill of music and music theory, as well as just like the basics of understanding, you know, certain parts of music is a big strength to have in that world. Because I mean, especially in EDM, like the music is half of the experience. The other
Right.
half is the visuals. Like, I mean, you might see it with Billy Joel or something where he's got like some crazy something going on, but like with especially with EDM, like that was where it was groundbreaking was the visuals
Right.
paired with the craziness of the music.
Right.
And
And
so
and the fact that in many of those cases the visuals are being done by a live VJ in the
mhm,
back that you're not, who's you think it might be to the idea that you mentioned earlier about like pre-rendered versus not.
yeah.
It was an epiphany for me to get to that point where you're like, "Oh my god, when I go to a concert, you've got the sound guy who's mixing sound live, but then you've also got like the visuals and lighting people that are just sitting there like hitting the spotlights when they need to be hitting the strobe lights when they need. I mean, it's some of it might be pre-rendered, but a lot of it is performance based. It's like
Mhm,
knowing the
Yeah.
set, and I think about I saw Madion and Porter Robinson on their
mhm,
live tour in New York. I saw them at Madison Square Garden Theater, and that was like one of the most mind-blowing live visual auditory performances synced up. They had like the 3 or 4 cubes and like LED stuff. They're playing like clips of anime, and it was all
mhm.
perfectly synced up. And I happened to be sitting like right next to the visual guy, and I'm watching him. He's like maybe doing more work than like Madion and Porter Robinson are doing on stage, just like cueing clips and like cueing lighting cues and just getting everything synced up. I mean, it really is one of those sort of like it's a magical part of going to a live experience like that you don't always pick up on.
I love the idea of everybody looking at the stage and Andrew's just like recording on the side, like, look
He's
at
like
this.
looking at the guy, yeah. What is this guy doing in the middle of the room?
Follow
What
him
is
on
he like?
Twitter.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I got a lot of buddies and friends that do visual work for artists, and it's so interesting that it's starting to become a basically a big part of the performance. Not even
Yeah.
just like the visuals that are up on the screen, but the person is actually becoming a part of that performance.
Right.
Yeah. No, my friend Jimmy, he said back, I think when he was, I hope it was Miami, but he said they started doing the DJs next with the VJs and they are
Hmm.
both on the stage at the same time. And
Yeah.
also, I'm not going to lie, half the time I'm watching like these DJ shows, the DJs just have a beer in the hand or doing this, and everyone is just filming the visuals. Like
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
the ones that get the biggest clips are the ones that just have the sickest visual. A lot of these 3D models and renders, and I'm like, I don't even think anyone's listening to what's coming
Yeah.
out of the
Yeah. It could be
sound. It doesn't
playing
look like the
something.
DJ's doing anything.
Yeah.
Everyone's like recording this cool movie, So it's
Well, there's a
interesting.
club. There's a club downtown that I know a few people who work there and do their thing, and that's what they have. It's the
Mm,
DJ right next to the DJ, like on the stage facing the same exact crowd as the VJ
Right.
wow.
and
I'd love
lighting.
to do
Yeah.
that one day.
it's an interesting thing to watch because like usually they'll be up in a booth like in a shelf basically
Right.
just watching from a little view thing or whatever, just whoever's performing.
Right.
Now they're like right there on the stage with them.
Which honestly, I mean, I love because I think that, yeah, I mean, just it sort of democratizes the idea that like when you go to a show, I mean, it's not even just the VJ and the audio person, right? It's whoever's managing the venue and the food service and the drinks and like, I mean, this idea of like going to a space is, you pay tickets to see an artist, right? But
Mhm.
half the value comes from the fact that you're going into a space with a bunch of other human beings and you're paying for this experience of like all of us are experiencing the same thing and having this like sensory event. And like that's increasingly rare, I think, in the world we live in, where like everyone can be on their phone experiencing different things and oh, check this thing out I'm looking at, and like that's cool too, but like to have a space where it is this audio, it is this visual, it is these people you're with. I mean, I like the idea that we're kind of celebrating that it is a performative experience with a bunch of artists doing their craft really well.
I mean, it's getting to a point where now and a lot of my buddies now they're not only creating the visuals, but they are the ones playing it back for the artist. So
Right.
they are literally
Mm.
going to be VJing for
They're
that
not
artist.
they're not shipping
Yeah.
an MP4 loop to another person that just puts it
Mhm.
on and loops it for however many seconds and switches to the next one.
Yeah.
To that point, I don't want to get this wrong, so I'll let you kind of fill us in. But it sounds like you've worked with some really, really top tier artists and had your work displayed at with some artists that I think everyone would know. Do you want to share a little bit about like the people that you've worked with, or like some of the bigger artists that you've worked with?
Yeah. DJ Diesel. Y'all know about that, right? The Shaquille O'Neal DJing.
Of course, man, unbelievable. I did. That is too cool.
A career pivot that I love, by the way.
It's so. I mean, I'm not even surprised at this point. That dude was on General commercials, doing stuff for what was it, Pizza Hut? No, Papa John's.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
just expanded his brand
Yeah.
to like anything.
Gold Bond. Yeah.
Cold Bond, Icy Hot.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, that dude. I mean, he's in everything. But I think like it's funny because they were some people were talking about the storyline of how he became a DJ, and this isn't from like Wikipedia. This is just like someone else was telling me. Now, is it true? I don't know, but it sounds like it. So it turns out he's been DJing for like a while, like probably since maybe the end of his NBA
Yeah.
career.
Wow.
And so he's been doing it for a little bit, and then finally he was just like, I just want to do it. And I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, like, of course, like you're Shaquille O'Neal, that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
just like go do it. And
Why wouldn't you? I mean, you have
and
all
so,
the
yeah.
resources to do it. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, go do your thing. And now he hosts like pretty big festival, not big like ultra music festival or like
Yeah.
EDC, but like
No, he's
he does.
yeah. He was at
he did,
Bonnaroo one year. He was at Governor's Ball this year.
Oh yeah,
And,
Yeah.
Wait, I did not realize it was a gov ball. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also, like,
Yeah.
I will say, EDC is a reference point. EDC is like unnaturally large. Like, I didn't even really clock how big EDC is. Fucking massive. Like,
It's so much.
Yeah.
It is so
huge,
much.
dude. Like, it's like
Yeah.
it's like top tier event maybe in the world. Not even music specific. So. I wouldn't hold him to being like, well, he's not doing EDC, but like Govball, that's dope.
Yeah,
I'm kind of mad I didn't go this year. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he now has his own thing. It's called Shaq's Funhouse.
oh my god,
And it's like he'll show up at a location, and we'll have a few of his like EDM buddies come in, and they'll all perform at this. I think it's maybe like a 2-night or maybe 1-night thing. And it supposedly it's like really big. They did one in Atlanta, and I was so tempted to like go and like just see what it's about, because not like, I mean, doing stuff for that team, it was fun,
Mm.
and it would have been cool to see some of the stuff that they're doing, but just to see what this festival thing that Shaq is putting on, like that would be the one thing that I was like, okay, I gotta go see
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
so it's just out there. Yeah, I want to be able to go and see what this is about. So yeah, he's been doing that alongside that, doing the general commercials and Papa
Yeah.
John's and Gold Bond and God knows what. So yeah, yeah, but that was one person that I did some work for. God, who else? Lil Uzi Vert.
Wow, really?
Yeah, Little Uzi Vert. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was. It wasn't anything too big. Like I wasn't doing like a giant visual package
Right.
for that for the team. It was just like a small portion of the a concert that he did.
But I mean, what is that like? What is that like to just, I don't know, to know that the work that you're doing is being, has access to be broadcast to that large of an audience? Like, does that change your approach? Does it, how do you mitigate the pressure of thinking like, I'm doing this thing for this sort of cultural moment, and a lot of people are going to see it? Does that influence your work? Does that change the way you approach it, or is it just like you're kind of doing your thing?
I don't know. I mean, since the beginning, and now it's kind of changed, but since the beginning, it's been like I'm just an accent for whatever this person is doing.
Okay.
So
Mm,
it's not, I'm just a small design accent to the entirety of this production. This isn't front and center. This isn't my time to shine. This is just, I'm here to just help out with production.
Hell yeah.
And whatever I do, it's going to be, I'm going to do the 100% best of my ability to be able to put on something that is showable and it's going to look good. But I do keep in mind, it's like, this is a small part to the entirety of this production that's being put on. So I'm not sitting there thinking like I'm going to be the best thing at this thing,
Right.
at this performance, it's
yeah.
like I'm here to just try to help support,
So
Interesting.
to that point, when you're given the opportunity to work on a project like that, do you approach it by saying, I need to do all the research into what the project is and its sort of end goal in order to service that vision? Like, is that sort of how you approach it, of like, I need to have a full understanding of the artist intent and how to be a good accent to that? Or do you realize that like people are approaching you because you have a voice and you have a sort of creative style that they think already is going to be, an accent to their process?
Yeah, so in the beginning I'm more like how much
That's a great first
how
question.
much money? No,
Always
I'm
the
just
best. Yeah.
no, it's I'm usually yeah, I'll think about like I mean, usually they'll come to me because I'll either have a creative style that they're wanting to add to the overall visual look of whatever they're doing. But
Right.
sometimes, like, I mean, it depends really. Like, are they needing some? Like, it used to be in the beginning, I was the person that would take a tight deadline, like very tight deadline, and
Mm,
turn it around pretty quickly. And that was my like thing in the very beginning. And so a lot of people got used to just coming to me, a week before a performance and being like, look,
We got it. Yeah.
we got like a 3-4 minute set. We need the entire thing animated, blah, blah, blah. Can you do it? And I'm like, I guess we're doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, and of course I would be like, okay, what do you need? What's this? Because I'm not going into it thinking you're wanting avatar level renders,
Right.
and we've got
yeah.
a week before this thing is supposed to,
Mm,
Um, but that was a big part of what I did. And now it's getting to the point where it's like, okay, what are you wanting? What do you what's your and not just what are you wanting, but what is your visual style? Do you think what I'm going to do is going to best support what you're wanting? Um, what do you want to say with the visuals that you're wanting? Things like that.
Right.
yeah. I mean, so you've worked with Little Uzi Vert, Shaquille O'Neal. What is the approval kind of communication like and feedback with these
How the
clients?
processes for each artist have been extremely different, and it's so weird because everyone might think it's the same.
Mm,
you know I've also done some work for like Meg the Stallion. I did work for Excision as well, and so those were completely drastically different from each other. If we were to break it down and putting it on a broad scope of things, like they're very similar. You're creating content for a big stage, um, live performance, all of that, you know. But the difference between something like Meg the Stallion and Excision is very much like very peculiar about, you know, screen sizes, how content is going to move and feel to the music that is being played. So does it need to be time coded? Does it need to be, you know, this and that? Whereas Meg the Stallion, it's very much like, okay, we need you to make a clip. We're going to play this clip. It might be on a loop. It might just go to a logo of Meg the Stallion's name. It might just be IMAG, you know, like video footage of her dancing. You know, I mean, we didn't know. So it was kind of just like make whatever to help support that. So it's very much, you're going from like, one is very centered around the visuals and very heavily, you know, everything has to be to the T, like not perfect, but pretty perfect.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about like the difference between working to a BPM and not working to a BPM, for example, like those are that's drastically, as an animator, that is drastically different, right? Like, and so I guess my question to you would be, do you find the rigidity of an artist who has a very particular vision, do you find that to be an easier place to work in versus someone that is sort of like broader, you know, these are the it's a broader checklist of the things we're trying to fill, but we don't have sort of like rigid constraints for you to work in? Because there sort of is this conversation of, right, does creativity happen in a box or does it not? You know, does having sort of the sort of guidelines to get you to where you need to go, is that better or worse? Like which do you prefer working in?
Well, and that's the thing. I strongly believe that everyone has an idea in their head, whether it be bad or good. You have an idea in your head. Now, communicate it and let me know so that I can, you know, help out and actually put your idea to, you know, to fruition, you know.
Right.
So it's like whenever you'll get clients that'll come to you and be like, well, we don't really have an idea, but we really like your work. Can you do this? It's like, you have an idea. You saw my work. So why don't you put together a mood board or like a small little thing, or we'll sit down in a meeting and go through some stuff and we'll, you know, structurally put things together, what you like, whether you want it to a certain song, whether you want it to just be overall this look, or whether, you know, is there a color palette? Is there a design choice that you want to make with what you've got? Is, you know, do the screens look a certain way? Is it broken up? Is it, you know, multiple different screens? Do you want everything to be, you know? And there's all this stuff that I'll break down with all these artists and or management or the team or whoever, to try to get that vision that they might not know they have in, and actually like display it and get it seen.
It's so important. I feel like that's the step that will save you so much time in a project.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, somebody could say, you know, I want it to be more fun. Okay, well, if somebody likes, you know, the Scream movies,
it's
then
like,
you know, that's a horror movie. That's more fun. You know,
it's the age-old meme in like anything design-oriented, right? Like, make it pop. Okay, like what, you know, pop could be like David Fincher making things pop is very different than, like, I don't know, just fill in another designer that's not, you know, or another visionary that's not David Fincher, right? Like, so to that point, like, you know, having worked with these incredible artists, what are, you know, you mentioned it might be a different approval process, there might be different sort of like methodologies, but if you could sort of succinctly say, what are the three things that you approach with every project to help sort of foster the vision of the person you're working for? Like, what are the soft skills that people need right now in motion design or 3D or live VJ stuff that would make them successful?
Yeah, well, it's like you can learn the skills that, you know, you need to be able to make the content, but it's, you know, simple business skills like being able to talk to people, being able to set out guidelines, being able to, you know, update and, you know, just talking to people, basic type stuff like that. Like, that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. And that's, I mean, good example at the DAT tour. in that conference. Like that was one of the things that I really harped on was like, keep creating content, keep doing your thing, like just do your own thing, build up your portfolio, but also like just learn to be personable. Just like talk to people. A good way to practice that is funny enough here at the conference. Like go and talk to so and so. And it doesn't have to be about Cinema 4D. It can be about anything under the sun.
Right.
You like football. Do you like playing Mario Kart?
Yeah.
I'll beat your ass in Mario Kart. Like I don't,
Funny
it's
you
like
bring
shit like
that up
that,
because I brought my N64 and we can...
oh yeah, it's in the back right now. Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's fucking throw down. It's just shit like that. And and doing that can help ease tension in a room pretty easily as well. So if you feel like you're the introvert, type of person, doing stuff like that can easily like release tension, can also make things a lot easier to talk to people about certain things.
Yeah, and I mean,
and
and to be honest, right, like it's all a practice, right? Like it's very easy in our industry to practice being in front of a computer 8 hours a day because that's the job, right? Like I don't, I always consider myself extroverted. And then 10 years into doing this, you're like, oh, it's not that I'm not extroverted. It's just that I'm not as practiced at it, right? Like if you're not spending the time in front of other people and your job is not pitching ideas and understanding other people's vision, you're just not going to be good at it anymore, right? Like you gotta, exactly to your point, like making space for that I think is huge.
And some of the first meetups after COVID were a little difficult, man. I was
oh my god,
I'm a little uncomfortable.
But I will say this:
it was so weird. Yeah,
I will say this:
so
the
weird.
best. I mean, the kind of like silver lining with COVID, right, is that it leveled the playing field, right? Like everyone post COVID was fucking weird, dude. They're like,
introverts.
What have you been up to?
Oh, they were. Oh my god,
what you been doing?
It was so.
I've been chilling in my apartment for 10 months. What you been doing? Like, oh yeah, same. Like there, that is talk about like a black swan event. Like no one foresaw like, oh yeah, everyone's just going to be socially isolated for a little bit. I mean, that was never in the cards, right? So, I mean, in a way, you shouldn't feel like even if before COVID you were a person who maybe felt like, oh, I don't do well in a group of people. And like, I think Mikey, not to plug us right now, but like one of the things we saw with the XR meetup post COVID was an insatiable appetite across the board. People who have been doing it for 10 years, people that just graduated college, every single person post-COVID were like, I just need to be with other people that are interested in, just broadly interested in the things that I'm interested in. And once we started getting those people in a room, it was just like, we fast forward to today, it's like people sharing jobs, people collaborating on social, personal projects, like, there was just so much magic that happened there. And I think that in a way that might not have happened, 5 years ago pre-COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like so much of what you're saying is just like, get in a room, be a person, talk about stuff, talk about what excites you, make room for serendipity and like cool things to happen. And as long as you do that, like, it really doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Like just authentic connection and just being excited about another person's project. And, what you just said, like, it might not be your moment to shine, but how cool could it be to be like, I'm going to be the accent to somebody else's vision. Like that's as exciting as, having your own vision and bringing it to life sometimes. So,
yeah. And that's the thing. Like you can still have your own vision and create and still keep doing that sort of thing. Like I always keep telling people, like, it's cool to create for other people, create on your own, like do your own thing. Like what do you want to do? Like I know some people do this job because it's a job and they thought it was interesting, but is there something in this realm, in this art realm, that you want to do? Like are you wanting to do visual type stuff of your own? Are you trying to make your own music? Or are you wanting to make a short film? Like what are you into? And let that be a driving factor in whatever you do too, because it can also, doing what you love, which is maybe that short film or that music or whatever, could lead to more of that opportunity coming up because more people will see it.
Yeah.
And I keep telling people, like, especially people coming out of college and or school in general, I'll keep asking, like, what do you want to do? And they'll be like, well, I see this one thing that keeps popping up on my Instagram feed or something. And I'm like, then do that. What's stopping you from doing that? Like,
Right.
just keep doing that. More than likely, somebody's going to want that. And especially if you're really good at that and you do it every so often, more people are going to want to like come and see it and see what you're doing and
Right.
want that for their thing, or they're going to want to, hire you to do a custom thing
Mm.
for
Right.
what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's basically how I got into the live event world, live entertainment, was because of that. Because
Right.
I saw that and I was like, I think I could do it. I think I could try it. Let's see what happens. And then I would do it. And slowly but surely things were starting to come my
Here
way
you
to be
are,
able
just
to,
doing stuff
yeah.
for Megan the Stallion. Like, no big deal.
Or yeah, putting, naked Buzz Lightyear up on a wall, it's like, it's,
Yeah.
Who knew?
crazy. So who knew? Who would have thought? Not me.
I've been reading not to, some people might roll their eyes, hopefully not, but I've been reading a book, Atomic Habits, and they were just talking about how we're kind of in a society where and you're laughing, Rev.
I knew. Look, Oppenheimer, man. It's starting to roll
Atomic
into.
Habits, not that kind of not an atomic explosion, but it's but the book's great. The one thing I liked about it was just kind of going off of what you were saying, is that one of the habits was like, we have a tendency to do the easiest thing, and when you try and do the hardest thing, you wind up not doing it as often. It sounds pretty cliche, but there's also just so much more rewards for people who can keep doing the same habit over and over and over and over again. What they've noticed, it's like, this sounds so obvious, but it's when you like things. And so if it is just starting to make an art piece, just do what you like. If you know what I mean? It's like that, it really will keep you going.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Versus like if you're always trying to be technical or something,
It's so simple.
Yeah,
It's
no,
so
it is.
That's the thing. Like it's so simple.
Yeah.
People think it's like you're joking, right? And I'm like, no. Why would I? No, like no. Like
So
I'm telling you exactly what happened with me.
I
Yeah.
talk about Todd
You try
Henry
it.
all the time, right? And like Todd Henry is just like a really good, I think, a good middle ground of, yes, being creative can be highly technical, but there are commonalities, whether you're a coder or you're a digital artist or you're a motion designer or you're a, graphic designer or UX UI, there are commonalities, right? And one of them is like, you will never do well in a moment if you haven't been constantly preparing for the moment, right? Like the idea that like by doing the same thing every day and falling in love with the process and not the result, right?
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
it's so easy to fall in love with the result, especially in a world that's dominated by social media and where everything is the result. Everything is looking at the 1% of everyone's best day. It's very easy to be like, I'm going to fall in love with this cool shit I made and I can put on the internet and everyone's going to love, right? Like that's very easy to fall in love with. What's not easy to fall in love with is, Rev, you were just saying, sitting with a client and being like, okay, so you saw my stuff. What did you like about my stuff? Like that's not as cool or sexy or immediately gratifying as thousands of people showing up to like something that you made, right? But if you can fall in love with the day-to-day of like storyboarding and mood boarding and doing stuff that doesn't work and then trying something else and then falling in love with the like moment of inspiration where you're like, I did a bunch of stuff and it didn't work and then I did this one thing that worked, those like day-to-day nuances. And it's something that like I'm sure all of us struggle with still. I mean, I can say honestly, I struggle with that all the time. I have to remind myself like I do love the process. That's why I keep coming back to it, right? I need to fall in love more with the process than I do with the end result. But, this idea of like, if you can fall in love with that and you can do that every day for the rest of your life, there's no question there's amazing shit on the other side of that. If you fall in love with the product and like the end result, you're going to be chasing the dragon of that for the rest of your life. And it's never going to be as rewarding as the thing you thought it was going to be. And,
that's my everyday. That's the thing. Like every day, it's very much chasing the dragon. Like the process, it can be a certain thing, but it's that end result that I keep trying to chase. And for bad or good or whatever, like it's gotten me to a certain point. So I mean, keep trying. Like here's the thing: like every day I'm making art.
Right.
Every day is not going to be a Picasso. It's not going to be a Da Vinci. Whatever. you always got to try again and fail until you finally shit out something good.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And speaking of like atomic habits, I mean, Rev, you're not known for doing something consistently. I'm just kidding. You've done how many dailies?
I mean, you know.
I just, in case anyone misses the intro, Rev, because I don't even think we've said it. You've been making dailies for
a long
years.
time. Yeah.
I mean, years. And I mean, every single day. Go, what is it? It's Revilo stuff _stuff. Go check it out. I mean, every single day you've made an amazing art piece, and some maybe not. Some are funny. I love when it's just a good smiley face. Love it.
Oh yeah.
But you've been so consistent over the years. How many days have you been doing the everydays, making a new art piece?
I don't even know at this point. I used to keep track. I used to try to, and then it got to a point where I was like, is it this number? I don't even know anymore. I remember the day.
Okay.
But I don't remember how many. I think at this point it's like maybe 1900 maybe.
Wow. How many
Oh my
years is that?
That's at least
That's
7.
Wait, how many? Hold on.
365, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on.
1900
Okay,
divided by 365 is 5.2 years.
Yeah, somewhere
5
around
years,
that. I
5
think.
yeah.
Wow.
I think.
Not
I
quite
think I'm
5 and a
at
half.
almost. I think I'm at either 4.5 or 5 now.
That's crazy.
I got to double check.
That's
This is the thing.
unbelievable.
I have not talked about the everydays in God knows how long, and so it's like it's all rolling back. It's starting to come back. You know.
So let me
Yeah.
ask you this. I
Yeah.
do want to demystify a little bit this idea of making daily art,
Mhm.
right? Let's say you're someone who's never done dailies, who struggles to even make weekly or monthly art, right? What are the skills or what are the techniques that you find most helpful in being able to create art every day?
Try again. That's the thing. Like it sounds so simple, but it's like, yeah, just press a button, see what happens. It's like that big red button could be the bomb, or it could be a bunch of flowers that pop out. You never know until you press the button. So just try it. If it breaks your computer, start from scratch again. Start over again. If it doesn't, keep moving on. You know, I think, you know, now we're in a point in tech where there are many different avenues to be able to learn a certain thing. Like YouTube is one of them. Vimeo might be one of them. Skillshare. What was it? Patrick 4D has a Skillshare class. Like,
Right.
you can go on
any
there and
Patreon. Find any artist you like and see if they have a Patreon.
dude, Patreon. Oh my
Yeah.
god! Like, yeah, that's the thing on Patreon too, is they have tutorials along with the scene file, along with assets that you can use for whether it be for free or for whatever. I mean, you're paying for the subscription.
Right.
So I mean, go on there and find somebody that has, you know, a similar look, or, you know, uses the same program or whatever, and try to learn off of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at that point. It's accessible so easily. So now the only other obstacle is just trying. Just go and try. Like, you'll fail. I've failed 1,500 days out of this entire process, but every once in a while there's one that I at least enjoy.
Yeah.
You know.
And
So
do you post regardless of whether or not you feel like you've succeeded, or?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
There have been days where, I mean, Vegas was a good example. Probably.
Good
God.
times. Good times.
Good Lord. Okay. Yeah.
That
We
was,
were, what was it? The Whiskey Down, and we were, oh my God.
Oh man.
Long story. But yeah, I was at the Whiskey Down, and we were all hanging out. It was Chris Schmidt, Maria, like everybody, I felt like. And it got to be like 11, and I was like, oh, got to do the daily. But everyone was having a great time, and nobody, you know, everyone was like, don't leave. I felt like I felt like one of the Beatles. Everyone's like, don't leave. No. And I was like, no pictures, no autograph. No. But no, but yeah, everyone was like, don't leave. So I was like, okay. And so I just like sat there and like I think I took a picture of like a bar napkin and then drew on it or something,
Mm,
and then uploaded that as like the
Yeah.
everyday, and that was the daily. But it's
yeah.
funny because like that's part of the project as well. It's like, even though it's a piece of crap, it's probably the biggest piece of crap that I've made. It's still part of the process. It tells a story. It's like, where were you in
Mm,
Vegas? Where at in Vegas at the whiskey down?
Yeah.
What were you doing? I was with a bunch of dumbasses hanging out, having a great time,
yeah.
like, that's just, it was a fun night,
Yeah.
and that was, we just had a great time just doing whatever. And that was part of it.
And it's led, what you might think of as one of the worst dailies has led to a very great story that's
Yeah.
educating other
Yeah.
people. And
I
look at
mean,
that. It was just a quick little snap of a
and
napkin,
and
and
that
now it's
It
an
was,
influential story.
and that the
So,
story is not bounded by a program, or it's the idea of
mhm.
like checking in with yourself every day and being like, did I do something today that was not in service of a client or another person's project, or it was just like, you might not have felt great about it, but dude, you know how hard it is for a lot of people to make space, even you're at the whiskey down in Vegas and you're being like, shit, I gotta spend 5 minutes doing this thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost kind of sad that like we live in a world where so much of our time is demanded by other things. I mean, to even just
Mhm.
make the time to be like, it's not what I want to do, but I gotta do it, like that's,
I mean, that's part of the whole therapy of it. Is it's almost, it's a diary for me.
yeah.
mm,
Like every time, there are a lot of people that need to write down their thoughts and their feelings on a piece of paper and then put it in a book, and every day they'll have a new chapter to
Yeah.
write about.
yeah.
And that's part of it. I might not like doing the therapy session, or I might not like doing this one thing every
But you're
day,
gonna
and I
do
might not
it.
have the drive, but I'm gonna
Yeah,
do it.
yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
And you know what's crazy
Yeah.
too is like,
Um
I'm a shit artist. Like I can't draw very well at all. But I recently did kind of take stock. I just moved to this new apartment in Brooklyn, and in moving, I was like, "Holy shit! I have sketchbooks going back to like 2014, right? Which at this point is like
mhm.
going on like a decade, right?" And like I go through them, and I'm like,
Oh my
so
god,
much
dude,
of it
yeah,
is
that is
like
a decade.
fucking shit. I mean, it's like I would never want anyone to see this stuff. But even going through like the 2014 one, every once in a while I land on something that I'm like, honestly, some of the renders I've done recently is like, I'm out of ideas today, but if I go and pull a thing I did in 2014, at the time I wasn't sharing it. It wasn't a daily, I guess it was a daily practice I didn't realize, but you go and you revisit this stuff and you're like, oh, this is, it's almost like, it's taking care of your future self, of like giving yourself inspiration down the line that you might didn't know you need, and like you get there and you're like,
Oh yeah.
oh yeah, like I don't know what I was doing at the time that I did this, but I'm looking at it now almost 9 years later, and I'm like, oh, it sparks inspiration. So that idea of it being like a therapeutic practice, and you just do it whether or not you have an agenda, it can serve you in the long run for sure.
Maybe we'll have
Yeah.
to do a like a little X. We've been wanting to do an XR motion challenge. Maybe we'll do a fun little week. Everybody post a weekly for
Yeah,
a week,
yeah,
and
yeah.
just
Mhm.
maybe some people stick with it, but that would be a fun little thing to do.
Yeah.
Is there a daily that just that you've made that holds a special place in your heart? Is there a
Mm.
one that you sometimes think about a lot?
I don't know. That's the thing, like I don't have a favorite. I really don't have a
Mm,
favorite, but I do know ones that other people like.
yeah.
And there are some that I'm like, why is that one the favorite? Why is that like, I did that in like 10 minutes. I was probably like just at an event. Now I'm like drunk and like just tired. And I did that in 10 minutes, And then that happens to be the one that people are just like, dude, oh my god, like that changed my life. Like I'm like, oh, really? That one?
Yeah.
That one was the one that I drew on a bar napkin in the middle of nowhere was the one, and I'm like, okay. I mean, if that, it, it it's funny, but like then again, it speaks to like art in general. Like,
Mm,
people are, there's probably that one painting or that one picture that people just really enjoy. And then the painter is probably just like, that took me like one night. Like I
Yeah.
was
hmm
with somebody else, like just doing stupid shit, and we just bought art supplies or something and made something, and then that becomes like $1 million painting.
Right.
It's like things like that. Like, but like I don't know. I think the more interesting part of it, like before, like what I said, like was the story behind it. Because like I can go back to it every day, and then I can look at it and be like, oh, okay, and then look at the date and be like,
Oh,
oh,
this
I
was good.
remember that.
Yeah.
Usually the Vegas ones are the ones where that I remember like very, very vividly.
It's like
what was it?
It's almost like journaling
or like
in a way,
or like
Yeah, it's very much like a diary.
bearing a
It's
time
very much
capsule,
like a diary.
that you go back and revisit, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what was going on.
Yeah, there was that the whiskey down. There was one recently, funny enough. It brought up a memory on my phone, and it was from it was from Vegas when Dave and I went to a club, and I had to do my daily, and then we ended up at the club, and I was like very close to not posting it on time. And I like immediately I was like, oh my God, while everything was going on, those memories are the ones that I really enjoy more so than the actual art that I make.
It makes it easier to do it in the future, where you're like, oh, I'm just like cataloging my life a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be like, oh, what did I do today? Okay, we're going to incorporate it into the everyday or whatever. But for now, it's just like, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I, experience? And then just put it down on paper. And maybe it's exactly what I did that day, or maybe it's how I feel, or whatever. Or it's just like, I just wanted to do an everyday and just move on, But that's part of the process. Like, some days it might be I want to do like an animation or something, and then it turns out to be a VJ loop, or it's something. It's just however I feel. Like, do I want to do this thing today, or do I just want to make something and move on? So,
well, I want to ask, in because we always like to talk a little bit about the kind of future of our industry and where we think things are going. And obviously, just talking about the studio you're working at, it seems like you have a very front foot forward in where everything's going. I do have a question though when it comes to some of the technologies, which I love the experiential stuff. Have you been messing around with, either you personally or the studio, with anything in the AR or VR space?
I've done a lot of like VR type stuff. AR as well. At the space, we've kind of delved into that, mostly just to see what it can do and what we could incorporate it with, but haven't come up with anything like super, like this is something we're going to be getting into.
Yeah.
But just experimenting. Yeah, I've done a lot with that. Yeah, the technology, it's to a point where you can start to like do some crazy stuff with it. I mean, I've seen a lot of the modeling type stuff with like VR, and that is pretty insane at this point. The whole, metaverse, like going into different worlds type thing is pretty cool, but there's some stuff with it that needs to be worked out, and then possibly there's going to be some cool stuff to come along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's the Quest 3 that's coming out along with the Apple Vision Pro, which the Quest 3, I feel like it's nice because we have the two new headsets are, well, there's a shit ton of headsets, but the two mainstream ones, if we will, that I think the average consumer is interested in is the Quest 3 and the Apple Vision Pro. And I love how they're actually both having massive pass-through capabilities. Like, that's kind of the main feature, it seems, which is very exciting. Quest 3 still more in the VR space, but having full color pass through, it's pretty exciting. We'll start with A. Do you think you're going to get either the Quest 3 or Apple Vision Pro?
No, I don't. It's like, I think a lot of the stuff that I do, like, I if I'm gonna put on that headset, that ginormous nuclear powered thing on my head, I'm probably not gonna want to, see whatever's on the other side. Like, I'm there to like experience it completely, So having this pass through stuff, like, I get it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But until it gets to a point where it's like flip the lens and I can see whatever, like
Right.
even then I'm not even like I'm there to
Yeah.
experience what's on the headset and not experience what's in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So the pass through thing is a little odd to me.
Sure.
Um, so like if I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna probably get like a higher resolution headset, something that's a little bit more immersive. Like it's supposed to take me out of the world that I'm in. Why am I wanting to try to reconnect back into the world,
Oh, interesting. That is a very good point. I like that you saying that because it's some people say that they want something that helps them with day to day lives. But yeah, it's kind of like if I'm going to the movies, like I want to be at the movies, you know? I want
I'm not there to listen to cousin Earl talk about, some dumb crap, I'm there to watch Oppenheimer, okay? I'm there to watch
exactly.
Barbie and Oppenheimer. That's it.
That is it. Yeah, because honestly, yeah, that's a good point. It is a very interesting point. I feel like, it's so everybody I think says this, but the headset is just big. They're both big. And I think in a sense, what some people are saying and why Apple released it not in September, but at their developers conference is because I think the main goal is to eventually get down to glasses. And I think they were
Mhm.
trying to say that this is a thing for developers. This is going to be a product more for developers, and we want it to kind of be viewed that way, even though the general public will be able to get on it because it's like by the time it gets to glasses, you're going to want people already knowing how to develop for it and make these cool assets and see what people like and don't like. So,
Mhm.
it's
It's so
interesting.
odd, like, that it would be now that they're announcing this stuff
Hmm.
when VR has been I mean, Vive has been making stuff for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's weird that now it would be the time to be able to release it.
Right.
And then when you look at the tech behind it and you're looking at what it is, it's like it's almost the same thing as like a Quest or the Vive
Hmm.
just in general. It's just Apple's brand is on it. So
Yeah.
what, it's and then there were, it was kind of weird that that was happening as well as they were hyping it up as this new thing in tech when
They
it's like
always do that.
the tech has been around. Vive has been, probably a little bit better.
Mhm.
Um, the tech has been around. It's not revolutionary, It's like maybe the whole like putting it on and having the Vive feel,
Yeah.
and like experience, but you're only getting that experience for the 20 minutes that you have of battery life. Like what like it's like
Mhm.
okay, now I got to plug it up and now I'm back to square one, you
Yeah,
know. And I think that's
exactly.
where the developer thing comes into play, but I don't know. If there's going to be any changes in headsets and things like that, I'm thinking in my head like up the resolution. Like it's got to be
Yeah.
like, eye quality. Like if I'm going to be looking at something that's this close to my face, I want to be able to have that quality of like,
Yeah.
you know,
Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean as close as you can get, and Vive has gotten to that point. Like it's
Mhm.
very much like even the cheap headsets that they have are pretty good.
Yeah.
Like they're pretty well made and they're good. Um so like, having something like that pass through, you could take it or leave it.
Right.
I don't like it really. It's not to the point where you can click on the pass through and it actually looks like you're in the world. You're in your reality.
Right.
But that's the thing. If I'm putting the headset on, why do I want to go back to reality? I'll just take it off.
Mhm. The
I'm
only
not going to walk around with it.
mm, I think it's going to be
Yeah.
tech definitely built for the next generation. Honestly, I think it's going to be one of those things where this is the tech that we're seeing develop that we're going to be the grandpas of and grandmas of like, well, how do you do this? And they're like,
Back in
how do
my
you?
day.
Yeah, we didn't have things on our hate faces, but it's going to be interesting. And I mean, the amount of use cases for positive workflows, if done right, is astronomical. Again, I feel like the one thing, they always say education's the number one thing that's really a pro with the headsets is when people take tests after wearing a headset and not, that they're able to retain so much more information.
Well, I mean,
But
with the Quest, like you're able to, and this is one of the things I actually thought was way more brilliant than the pass through type stuff was hooking it up to your computer and having having it make another screen for you, so you can pretty
yes,
much have like this huge landscape of just multiple screens. I thought that was pretty interesting and pretty well made for it. I think the issue was the whole lagging
yeah,
thing.
Yeah, if you're
You
gonna, I
know,
mean, like, dude, there are already times that I'm sitting in front of a 34-inch 4K monitor right now, right? There's still times that I'm like leaning into my computer, just like I can't really see that, right? Like, if you don't have that visual fidelity in a headset, like, I don't. The idea of having endless amount of monitors sounds great, but like if I'm trying to get pixel perfect, and like so much of our jobs are, a lot of my job is like pixel pushing, like just getting in and being like, what's the shift that like the anti-aliasing on the edge isn't. If I can't see that and I'm doing it in a headset, I mean, it's just not like, it's not
yeah,
gonna
it's
happen.
funny that the screen is like 2 inches from your eyes, and you're still having
And
to
you're
do
like, huh.
this to it. You're still having to like look right.
Dude,
Yeah, it's
to be
so
honest,
interesting.
You're still,
After Effects is the worst about it, where it's just like
Oh my god,
you
yeah.
can move pixels like 2 or 3 units, whatever a unit is in After Effects,
Mhm.
and it goes from like fully solid line to like 50% opacity line to like 25%
Mhm.
opacity line to like
You see it,
13.
you're like,
And
what
you're like,
is
oh
no?
my
Just,
god,
yeah.
what is happening? Is it a pixel or is it not a pixel? Like, is it a third of a pixel? Yeah, I mean, and obviously, Rev, you in a live performance space, that becomes even more, like if you're able to walk up to a wall and like inspect it in the real world that closely, that kind of like precision becomes even more important. For me, it's mostly just being like OCD, but yeah, I mean, I do think that there's just, I keep saying it every time we have this conversation at this point in the podcast, but it's just like, it kind of does feel like a solution in search of a problem right now. And until we get to this point where like, there's so many things that we're still figuring out with the tech that we're using on the day to day, that like, until we get that stuff sorted out, it's going to be very hard to have a compelling use case for everyone to go and buy a headset tomorrow and start using,
The more you can incorporate it into the day to day, like tasks and mundane things,
Yeah.
like the easier it is to be able to get out to people and
But
like have them use
But
it.
Mikey, I think you're right 100% too. Like the education space is like the first to adopt it, right? Like there's a reason
Yeah.
that the government uses it for military training. Or if you're a surgeon, we're not going to give you a person to perform open heart surgery on if we can give you a bunch of simulations on a headset, and yeah, the lag might be there, but like I would hope that if you're doing open heart surgery, you're taking your time anyway, right? Like it's not something you need to like move within, rapid speed or whatever, but like there are already applications absolutely for this kind of stuff to be developed and researched and, expanded on. So
Yeah, it sucked to have lag in my open heart surgery.
yeah, I wouldn't want that.
It would
No
not
one
feel so great,
Yeah, no kidding. So this is
Mhm.
this isn't the main question, but this is the transition question, and maybe you'll know where we're going from this. In a fight, Elon Musk or Zuckerberg?
God damn it.
Subject.
God damn it. Okay, we're at this point. Might as well no. What the hell is the like okay, so like what okay, what are they
Don't
just
avoid the
beefing? Are
question.
they just beefing? I don't even know. This is the thing too. I'm so out of the loop of so much stuff. Like good example, like I have not seen Oppenheimer, not seen Barbie. I understand the whole culture thing behind it. What the fuck is this thing with
So yeah.
Elon and like
I
I
think
don't like? Does he want to fight him? Like what is this whole like? Fill me in a little bit.
it's all ads.
I can tell Andrew's just like, what the fuck is this?
It's the
Just like,
dumbest.
oh my god.
It's literally just like, dude, it worked. It worked. We're sitting here talking
Yeah.
about it. It worked. I don't think either of them wanted to do anything other than like everyone talked about it for 2 months. It worked.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
It's
Well,
so weird how this like the fighting world is now like before it was like, okay, we're going to take Olympic level athletes. We're going to take these feats of nature. We're going to put them toe to toe. And it's going to be a very, it's an art form. This form of fighting is an art form,
Sure.
and we're going to put them in a ring to battle it out. And and now it's like, okay, we're taking YouTuber A and YouTuber B and just having them go out. And it's like, okay, but that makes up
lest we
$500
forget the
million.
fact that, like, yeah,
I
I mean,
know.
we're also just like all down for the idea of like, we know that people get what's the fucking NFL head injury that everyone's like,
Oh yeah,
it's bad.
concussions.
It's no, not
Concussion.
even concussions.
Yeah.
Like,
But when it's multiple
yeah, when it's like
concussions, you get
you're
the
going to hurt yourself or other people in your older, like
Yeah.
your middle age, not even older age, like your 40s, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess if you want to do it, by all means, but it just feels a little, it feels a little barbaric to me. WWE though, like,
Okay, WWE, that's a
is
good
like,
example.
I
Yeah.
actually kind of, I went from being like WWE's like crazy and weird to now being like, oh, I
Yeah.
actually kind of like the idea of like, let's fake it, I guess. I mean, there is still
The story is hands
right,
down
and like
the
there are
best part of that
still,
entire
I mean,
thing.
people still get
Yeah.
concussions and people still get injured in WWE, and like people are
Mm-hmm.
still athletes in WWE, no question. But like, I've never gotten the appeal of being like, let's go watch two men or women in their prime beat each other bloody in the octagon.
I love it. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I do.
dude,
I'm
I
so
just, like,
sorry.
I mean,
I love the back and forth of this.
I
This
guess
is-
I
this
guess if
is-
people
yeah.
are, I'm not gonna tell anyone what they can or can't do.
It is primal. It is
But,
very
like,
much
for
a
sure, yeah.
weird instinct of just like two
Kill them.
identities
'em.
and humans come. Yeah, exactly. And
I mean,
it's,
as soon as Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk were like, "We'll cash in on this," I'm like, "I'm done."
well, so Rev, if you had to put $1,000 on one, who would you go for?
fucking, are you kidding, dude? Zuck all the way, man. He's jujitsu trained,
Yeah,
and
this
Elon
is-
Musk
yeah.
has the body of a fucking weird robot, controlled by, like, he has the body of the robot from, or the alien from Men in Black. Like, he
Yeah.
looks like he's got like a little version of himself in his body, controlling the rest of his body. Like, also just age wise, like, there's no question Zuckerberg would dominate. I mean, I don't even like either of them, but like,
Yeah, I mean, he's got the most training.
That is
Yeah.
fair. All
Yeah.
right. Well, leading into the next topic. So
How do
switching.
you, okay, what's this?
So
what's this
switching.
segue?
I thought it
it
was a segue.
transi-
It turns out.
Oh, it is. Well, no, it was a segue. So going from VR with Mark Zuckerberg to now Elon and AI, not his, because he hasn't actually made any, but that was the transition I was going for. But AI in our industry, in a weird way, it kind of seems like, even though it hasn't slowed down, I think the initial shock has slowed down. Like, we're not all like holding our breaths every single day, like, what's gonna happen? We've kind of hit this. I'm not gonna say it's plateaued by any means, but at least we all have an understanding of it, and we see what's going on. Anyway, Rev, what is your thoughts on AI in our industry, and do you use it?
I have used it. I see it as a tool. Let's just put it that way. Like, it's another tool that you can add to your skill set. I do think I do. This can change. I'm not. This isn't. I'm not like hard set into my ways about anything, especially with AI, because it's so It changes all the time.
Mm,
Every second
Every
we're
day, I mean,
sitting
yeah.
here,
yeah.
it's changing. Like, it's constantly upgrading itself and making itself better, as well as the people that are actually writing and developing these things. Like, it's becoming so much better over time that, like,
Yeah.
my mind could change on any of this tomorrow
right.
or the next day or in a month or in a year,
Mhm.
But as of right now, I see it as a tool. It's a tool that can help in many different ways. Like, I mean, a good example is like one of the AIs that I've seen, or AI models, is making like an HDRI from just basic drawings that you do.
Yeah.
The,
Like, that's like
NVIDIA-
perfect.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's great.
Like, I can make a skyline in like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's perfect for that. And then I can model whatever I need to model, do all this other stuff with it. I mean, heck, I could even make a texture from AI
Mhm.
that's seamless, a seamless texture of like a rock ground,
Yeah.
And I can make it,
Roto, people also sort of overlook the fact that like Roto Brush, which has been in After Effects forever, is
Yeah.
technically machine learning AI driven, like from Rotobush 3, right? I mean, and I use that all the time, and I love
Yeah.
it. I don't want a
Yeah.
roto. I do, take.
Well, yeah. And I mean, even now it's starting to, you could just press a button and it detects the subject and the scene.
Right.
I mean, it's like, it's perfect. It's almost perfect now. And
Mhm.
then like, I mean, we're also getting to a point where we can have AI like auto edit a podcast.
We're using it on this episode, I'll tell you that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And I mean, it like I said, it's a tool that can help in the process as well, and it takes out half the battle
Yeah.
of doing all this, and you can easily create content in that way,
Mhm.
and not have to worry about the tech boundaries that are
Yeah.
good. So I do think it can help in those ways. I think relying on it heavily and it being the thing that like holds up all of your work, or being the thing that holds what you're doing, is not the best way to go about it. It is a way, don't get me wrong, but like it's a little bit like, well, you could do other things with it. Like you can just typing in a prompt and then calling it a day is like, okay, like, you know. And then there's like people selling prompts, which is funny. The funniest thing I've
Yeah.
ever.
Prompt engineering 101. Take my
Oh
Skillshare.
my
Yeah.
god! It's like they have this entire paragraph of that, and then people are like, "Yeah, that's the prompt I want." I'm like, you're not going to get the same result.
Yeah,
I
and
know.
also
It's like
yeah.
it's a completely different
And
one
it's
every
not
time. What do
there's
you?
no quantifying it, right? Like you can't really say like, oh, this prompt is what does that even mean?
Yeah. It also, I feel like, will skip things all the time. Like you can put in, say, a knight in shining armor. Granted, it's a long post. It won't even put a person in armor. It'll just be a person. And I'm like, wow, like it is interesting. I don't know. I've been using Mid Journey. I use it probably every single day, but I did notice something interesting. I might have to make a video on this. It can't do weird abstractions or modifications on a face. Like I'll say head with 4 eyes on Midjourney 5.2, the newest one. It will not make it.
Right.
I like doing weird things like 2 noses, won't do it. 3 mouths, can't do it. And kind of like any weird thing of that nature, it doesn't do it. I'm like, oh, that is so shocking. It kind
Yeah.
of always goes back to its original look of looking humanoid. Like, yeah, because I like aliens. I like these weird demonic things. I like crazy, cool sci-fi aliens. And it doesn't do it. I'm like actually was really shocked recently when testing it out.
Yeah.
Like you can get some stuff, but you have to use like prime mantis, mixed with this that looks human, and then it'll kind of do it, but you can't just give it exact directions.
Yeah, I mean, you start to notice certain things with it, and I think that's where part of it has a boundary issue, where it's like it hasn't broken through that one boundary or that one leap. So now it's like,
Yeah, I think it's also interesting. I don't know exactly how it works, the back end, but I think what it's doing is why they look better is because
mhm.
so these broad models that you get are always going to look in certain constraints in order to make sure you have a more successful chance of having a more beautiful image.
Right.
I
Mhm.
think that's kind of why the images are getting better, but it's kind of
Yeah.
getting harder to be more creative with. Mhm.
Over and over again. So it's going to start to look all very similar, and then
Yeah.
it's probably going to get to a point where it's going to reference itself.
Oh, it already is. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think you can already tell there's already like a look to
The AI art. Yeah.
yeah. It's
And
still
yeah.
super impressive, and I think it's very useful in a lot of cases. But I do think that if you were to your point, I'm an AI artist. I can usually tell that you're an AI artist. Like I've already
Mhm.
gotten like 50 Instagram accounts that follow me that I'm like, you are doing AI art. You joined 3 months ago, and every one of your posts is like 100% Mid Journey.
I
Like,
will say there is one account. I feel so terrible for not knowing the name, but their prompts are genuinely so good that that they're not necessarily the prompts are good, but the ideas are fantastic. Like over the course of a month, they'll do just a picnic, outside, and then they'll do, but it's really creative how they do each item. And I'm like, oh, that's like I've never seen somebody try and build a universe out of AI. It's like a different type of
Right.
creativity that I kind of appreciated for the first time while looking at AI art. I'm like, I like how you're building these universes out. I don't know. It's interesting. Again, a tool though for creativity.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to be seeing it for a good long time, is using it as a tool to help build what you're thinking, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so whether it's good or bad, I don't know. Time will tell. But
Yeah.
I do, yeah. For now, I'm going to see it as a tool. So
Yeah.
Great. Well, I mean, I feel like that's all I had. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of updates on AI recently. And that's all the thoughts I kind of had written down. Andrew, did you have any more questions?
I was thinking we're kind of at time, right? Like I feel like we covered just about everything I wanted to, so.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave the floor up to you now, Rev. Is there anything that you wanted to share, or did you have any more questions? Is there any projects we should be looking out for? Um, where can we find you?
you could go follow me on Instagram at Revilo_stuff. I'm also on Twitter, Threads. Now I got to put in Threads.
Yeah.
And pretty much any social media at this point that I can think of. You can go on there. I'm going to constantly be updating it with the everydays and VJ loops. If you want to download any of the VJ loops, they are all free. Um, some with project files. So if you want to go and like look at the project file, you're able to go and look at it on Gumroad at Revelo_stuff. And yeah, just keep creating, keep having a good time. That's all this is. That's all I gotta say. Keep trying.